Hello, I'm Melinda, and today I want to answer a question that many students have asked me. And that question is, what information goes into a conclusion? So I'm going to give you some guidelines for how to structure your conclusion. Let's begin. In earlier lectures on academic writing, we looked at a 5-paragraph essay, and you'll be familiar with this diagram already. You know that an essay starts with an introduction, and that the introduction has 3 parts: background or attention-grabbing information, a middle, which is usually a link between the background and the essay topic, and the third part is the thesis statement, which outlines the content of the next few paragraphs. Let's jump down to the conclusion. There are 3 main parts. Firstly, notice that there is a clear link between the beginning of the conclusion and the thesis statement of the introduction, and we'll look at some examples later. The next part is a brief summary of the main ideas of each body paragraph. And the third part is a sentence which brings the reader back to the essay topic by answering the question or commenting on the topic. So here are the links again, and you can see that links to the rest of your essay are integral to your conclusion. The reader is expecting to be reminded about all your main points, and they expect a clear answer to the question. So links. Make sure you understand them. Make sure you are using them in your writing. Let's look at an example. You'll find this example on page 2 of your notes. Here we have a conclusion, and I've divided it into 3 separate coloured sections so that you can see the 3 parts clearly. You can see the blue sentence at the top, which links to the thesis statement for this essay. Some of the words may be repeated, but the structure must be different. Next we have a link to each of the body paragraphs, which were about trading, cultures, and a negative aspect of the coffee trade. And then the third part is a link between the topic and the last sentence of the conclusion. So overall, this is an example of a conclusion that neatly finishes the essay. It is linked to the thesis, the content of the body paragraphs, and importantly, it answers or comments on the topic. So let's just go over some of those ideas. The first part of the conclusion is linked to the thesis statement, but it doesn't use the same sentence exactly. Sometimes it repeats the words for emphasis. That's okay. So here, the first sentence of the conclusion says that coffee has played an important role in many aspects of our lives. Whereas in the thesis statement in the intro, it says, coffee has been significant in bringing countries together. So there's a clear link there. Next, there is a summary of the main ideas from each body paragraph. But again, we don't repeat sentences exactly. We need to change things around a bit. And finally, the last sentence answers the question or comments on the topic. So this is the structure that you need to become familiar with. And here is a useful piece of advice from Massey University in New Zealand. I'll read it for you. The conclusion is the final place to show the connections between all the points made in your essay. Take the most important, relevant, and useful main points from your body paragraphs and summarize them here. Use the same key words and ideas as the body paragraphs, but don't just repeat the same sentences. And this is another useful piece of advice. Make sure that you follow this rule. Don't introduce any new information in your conclusion. New information goes into the body paragraphs, not the conclusion. Okay, So do you feel that this is all making sense to you? Can you put the structure into action? Let's see. Here's an essay outline. It's just a set of notes or a plan for an essay. You'll find the same plan on page 2 of your notes. So our topic is what it takes to become a professional athlete. So we've got our notes divided into 5 paragraphs here. So let's look at the introduction. At this stage we've got an idea for our thesis statement, and I'll read it. To be truly successful financially and physically, an athlete must prioritize sport over everything else, must have a natural gift, as well as a predisposition to train, and must make the right connections within their chosen sport. You should be able to see what the 3 body paragraphs will be about. Let's look at the body paragraphs together now. Body 1, the ideas that we will develop are: sport must come before study and before family. Many athletes struggle with their studies, and achieving balance can be difficult. They must manage stress and often the difficult teenage years. For Body 2, our ideas are that training can be quite boring and repetitive. Many athletes suffer injuries while training, and here we could give some examples. And sometimes an injury can mean the end of a promising career, and again we could find examples. And for Body 3 we have: it is possible that some athletes go unnoticed as they aren't entering the right competitions. The influential decision makers in the field aren't seeing them, so from an early age they may be missing development opportunities. And here we could give an example of a successful athlete's career path. So these are the ideas that we plan to develop. Think about it for a moment. Can you make a sentence to link the thesis? Can you summarize the body paragraphs? What is the writer's answer to the essay question? Stop the video now and think about how you would do it. Okay, so let's look at how we'd write a conclusion to work with these ideas. Remember that the first thing we need to do is link to the thesis statement. So you can see in this example that we've used the first few words of the thesis statement that was in the introduction, but we've changed the structure a bit. And we need to summarize the main ideas of the body paragraphs. And we need to answer the question or comment on the topic. Can you see how the last sentence clearly comments on the topic or essay title? Let's take a short diversion here and look at some of the vocabulary that we can use in a conclusion. And here you'll see 4 different ways to write the same sentence. And I'll give you a moment to read through them. So you can see a bit of variety there. We've started with in conclusion, to conclude, to sum up, and in the last example we've simply jumped straight into the sentence. And here's some more useful vocabulary with examples of how they are used, and you'll find this chart in your lecture notes on page 3. Okay, so now we're going to look at another essay outline, and this is the essay plan. It's on page 3 of your notes. and I'll read through it with you. So from the introduction, this is the thesis statement, the last sentence of the introduction. Several factors have been responsible for the standstill in space exploration. Firstly, there were several deaths in the Russian and American space programs. Secondly, the financial cost was great and was seen to be diverting money from defense budgets. And finally, there was the sheer danger and the logistical problems of colonizing distant planets. For Body 1, we've got, there were many accidents. In 1980, 50 Russian scientists died when a booster exploded. In 1986, 7 American astronauts died 72 seconds after liftoff as the world watched. And from 1986 to 1999, there were other incidents, including satellites and rockets exploding. Body 2, we're going to talk about the great financial cost, American, French and Russian satellites, and rockets exploding often just seconds after takeoff, and the cost of this is very high. And Body 3, danger and logistical problems. So it's not possible to breathe air or to grow food in outer space. There's a lack of water. People travelling into space will be separated from the family. They'll be living in an artificial environment. And here we could talk about the Biosphere 2 experiments. And of course your job is to write the conclusion. Remember to use the links, so take out pen and paper. Are you ready to write? This may take 15 to 20 minutes. Pause the video now while you write a conclusion. Okay, so are you ready to move on? I'm not going to give you an example for this task. And in fact, we're going to finish this lecture with a quick 5-question quiz. So here is a conclusion, and by reading the conclusion, you should be able to deduce answers to the questions on the right. The reading and the questions are in your notes on page 4. I'll tell you the answers in a few minutes. Are you ready to read the conclusion and write down the answers to the questions? Pause the video now. Are you done? Here are the answers. I'll give you a moment to read. How did you go? Have you written similar answers? I hope so. And I'll leave you today with the reminder of the structure of a conclusion. So, that's writing a conclusion. And now, hopefully, you have a good idea of what needs to go into your own conclusion.